Hi everyone, Pastor Tim here at Calvary Church here in Pueblo, Colorado, and you have clicked on a link. That is our message recap, rewind, and bonus features from the sermon we had on Sunday, September 19th. Now this is part of a series in which we are looking at words and phrases that are very common in a church culture, but may not be very common to you. So we're trying to demystify and understand church jargon and language so that we all have a better way of understanding our communicating. And one of the words that we looked at last week was the word law and commandment. And if there was ever a word that gets thrown around at a church, accusatory, is that you're full of rules and full of laws and full of commandments. Do this, don't do that. Sign everywhere a sign. Don't do this, don't do that. It is frustrating. And it's frustrating for the believer in the context of a church, and it's frustrating for an unbeliever who comes into a church with all of these assumptions that it's all about following rules. I better conform, and how do I conform? What's this rule? What's that rule? And we know that through the gospel, Jesus Christ frees us from the burden of the law. He takes the law upon himself and carries it all the way to the cross on our behalf, but we still have a relationship to the law. We still have a relationship to the commandments. Now, rules that we may set up in a church of, hey, we do this and that, aren't commandments. We can't judge people based on human rules or rules that we feel comfortable with. We have to understand that only commandments, those things that God communicates to us what is right and wrong, are those things that we are to focus on. Whether or not you wear this type of shirt or your beard is this long or your hair is this short is irrelevant. None of that matters because we're called to live according to God's word, not man's laws on how we are to live. And one of the verses, though, that often comes up that I want to look at, kind of the bonus features section of it, is from John chapter 14, specifically verse 15. Now, I would encourage you that as you read that verse, you also read John chapter 15. All right, but we're going to look at John 14, verse 15, but it's also really great to read John chapter 15. So that verse that Jesus shares with us in John 14 says, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." If you love me, you will keep my commandments. Now, the commandments are filled with love because Jesus says the greatest commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is love your neighbor as yourself. Love is foundational to God's law. See, we often think that laws about right and wrong, do this, don't do that. But the law from Jesus' own mouth is about love. And he connects loving God and loving others with this commandment that he gives his disciples, believers, Christians, that if you claim you love him, I love Jesus, then it's going to be noticeable that you follow his commandments, that you obey his commandments. And what are the commandments of Jesus? What are the laws of Jesus? They're the same as the laws of God. Love him and love others. It's the same. There's a fly in here, sorry. They're the same commandments. Loving. And so we are called as believers, if we follow Jesus, if we claim that we love him, then our lives are going to reflect obedience to those great commandments, loving God and loving others. And if you want to find out, well, how do I love God? How does that show? It shows in compassion. It shows in singular focus that I'm going to make him the object of my affection. I'm not going to replace him. There are so many ways in which we show our love to God and show our love to one another. And Jesus says, if you claim love, you better be able to see it. That's all that he's communicating. So, as we work through these words that are very common in churches, but sometimes very misunderstood, let's remember that when it comes to laws and commandments, we follow God's laws and commandments. And to fulfill it really is the object of love. Love centers on how to fulfill God's commandments. So I hope that's an encouragement to you. Watch the entire sermon up on YouTube, up on our website, and it will give you a greater understanding into this church jargon we call rules or commandments and laws. So until next week, have a great time. Bye.